Nerd Skool is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Now offering video visits so you can take control of your orthopedic care from the comfort of your home. Schedule online at orthocarolina.com. Ortho Carolina, you improve.
Hey, fellows. It's the first night of another season.
Nerds roll. Nerds roll.
My glasses are broken.
And this will begin season 2 of Nerd Skool.
Welcome back to season 2, Nerd High. Glad to have you.
It's gonna be crazy stunts. We're gonna
No.
Joe's gonna bring more penis jokes.
a lot of penis stuff.
I am a super nerd.
The Nerd Skool Podcast.
Starring Andy,
Star Spangled Band with a plan.
Maybe I'll try to do a cartwheel.
TBJ,
Well, congratulations. You did dirt. Ta-da. I ain't got no shame. All my exes can tune in. We can have an episode where I compare them to all the Marvel villains. We can do that.
Art Star,
I don't love wiener. I'm just trying to make money. Lord Artemis Prime.
No.
Yeah, my real name is Joe. Did I ever tell you about the time I hung out with DMC at Mertz?
The Nerd Skool Podcast.
Well, just to speak on your whole wrestling thing, when I was watching this, it made me think of video games. Just like usually whenever someone was playing like Marvel versus Capcom or Marvel superheroes,
Yeah.
a lot of times whenever you chose Captain America or Cyclops, their move sets felt kind of the same,
Okay.
but they also felt very wrestly. Yeah, they felt very
Wrestlery.
wrestly. Yeah,
Wrestly,
Yeah,
like
so, like,
muscly.
you get like the the body slams, like the running knee thrust kind of moves and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
it-
So, yeah, as we were talking before we started recording and as Art was joining, I was kind of saying how I noticed in Hawkeye and in this Captain America movie, The Winter Soldier, there was a lot of wrestling moves in the battles.
Maybe the fight choreographer for this movie got his or her start in the wrestling world.
See, that's what one of you needs to be assigned to do that research. Like, where's there a real wrestling influence, or
Or is it just
but,
like
I mean,
someone's making a fight
watch
scene?
wrestling. I watch wrestling. I'm kind of into the whole wrestling world kind of thing. But I think that fact that you a lot of times associate things with wrestling, Joe.
yeah,
I feel like
maybe I
you
just
might
always
not
do
want
that.
that task, but it's like, I mean, even just watching like Loud and Gruff or whatever else, like I've noticed you always pop in some sort of wrestling tidbit. No
I guess I do.
You find a way, they'll put a wrestling tidbit in there.
I guess it's
Like
just
I'm waiting for the guy watching and you say something about Bruno San Martino or something,
Or
You're like
Greg the
Greg
Hammer
the Hammer Valentine.
There was a
Greg the Hammer Valentine is a heavy influence in my life. Oh, real quick, Andy, though, Andy's here in person in my podcast studio, the History for Jerks podcast studio. And Andy, real quick, the Wi-Fi password is all caps poop jerk. Poop jerk. POOPJERK. Poop jerk is the password.
Poop jerk.
All right, so now he's on the
Poop jerk.
So now everybody's going to be riding around
jerk.
trying to put in poop jerk
Right.
as passwords to all kinds of Wi-Fi.
Yes, sometimes I make passwords just because I want to see TBJ's reaction to me saying
I believe
jerk.
that. There are things that you all say just to get my reaction.
Yeah, in fact, when Art and I were recording the happy hour, there was lots of pauses like, oh, TBJ wouldn't like this. Oh, what would TBJ say right now? So you were a heavy influence in our life. But I do want somebody to find out, like, something if we could have a Marvel executive here, what I would ask is, like, it'd be interesting to know when they do the fight scenes, like, how much is improvised, if any? Is it all like
It's not going to be improvised.
choreographed to a T, you think?
Oh yeah.
It's never like
For
Chris Evans,
safety.
like, what if I just do a power
you don't want
slam?
people. You don't want people to get hurt.
No, it's
Yeah,
all just like your actual wrestling matches are choreographed for
Yeah.
safety. These are all
Right.
choreographed. I just looked at the fight choreographer. His name is James Young. But because of safety,
Yeah.
it's all worked on.
Yeah. There's a bit.
Choreographed to a T.
There's a bit where Cap's fighting Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And they do a thing where like Cap knocks a knife out of his hand.
Yeah.
And he flips it and catches it with the other hand and
Yeah.
stabs with it. There's no way that happens.
Yeah, you have to really play in that.
Right?
But is
But
Chris
even
Evans
in your
really doing
simplest,
that? Or is it a
even in
stuntman?
your simplest of fight scenes, there's choreography if it's staged or filmed, because and accidents do happen. We have had actors who have broken ribs and backs on set because
Or
they're
Brandon Lee, who died.
Or
physical.
shoot somebody in the face.
It's
like,
just that was a
Stephen
tragedy.
Baldwin.
Yes.
I mean, Alec Baldwin.
Alec. But one of the reasons that safety protocol is there, so it's less dangerous, right? Accidents can still happen, or you might have hit harder than you intended to, or fell.
Well, in wrestling, though, I will like not to just argue this, because I, of course, have no idea how movies are. Of course, movies are probably way more scripted, but wrestling, we find out like some people have said that some are scripted to a T, and some are. A lot of it is improvised. They talk to each other, they whisper in each other's ears before they do a move, so they know who's going to win. They know the general like back and forth, but the moves sometimes are made up as they go, right?
Well, they're not made up. They're like a set of rules that you can, if Andy and I are in a ring,
Yeah.
if we decide to improvise, one, we trust each other as fighters, wrestlers, and two, I can say a move to him and he would know what to do, and I
There
can
must
carry
be
it
like
safely.
taps and codes that means
So even though it's not maybe choreographed to a T, it is like a repertoire of choreographed moves that they can go to.
Yeah, they have a shorthand where, like, if 2 taps means a suplex, 4 taps means get on the floor. I'm going to do a high cross body block through the ropes.
Well, and then some wrestlers hate other wrestlers because like some feel like, oh, this guy's notoriously too rough, or he hits too hard, or Andre the Giant. You never knew.
What's her name? Ric Flair's daughter, Charlotte Flair.
Charlotte Flair, named after Charlotte, North
Flair.
Carolina. Woo!
Right. She not too long ago had a feud with what's her name? Nia Jax.
Oh yeah.
Who's no longer with WWE. But there was like a lot of times, like they actually in ring, like they were, doing their choreographed, scripted sports entertainment segment.
Yeah.
And it got kind of real and physical. But like there have been, like one of the reasons they said they actually got rid of Nia Jax was because in the ring, like she was almost like dangerous to work with, because the way that, she was a bigger female. So some of her competitors were smaller, but then she was really rough with them. It wasn't like, I'm going to toss you this way, duck and dodge, but like act, really sell it. It's like some of the things they weren't really having to sell because she was really aggressive enough that like she was actually hurting them in the ring.
2 things. One, Nia Jax, that worked at one time she actually broke Becky Lynch's nose in the middle of like a scripted fight thing, and that actually worked out because Becky Lynch was able to like come back, like was sitting there with a busted up nose and bleeding, which doesn't usually happen much in wrestling or WWE anymore because they're trying to be a little more family friendly. But she looked hard ass because she was still like, she was messed up and bleeding, but she was still like taunting and shit, and that kind of made her like jump into like sort of she became the most popular wrestler on the roster, male or female.
Who did?
Becky Lynch.
Oh, okay.
Becky Lynch.
And like she kind of like one of the first
women
to main event WrestleMania.
Good for that feminism in wrestling.
And the other thing that happens in wrestling.
No, really, if you're saying she was the most popular out of men and women, that's huge.
Yeah, there's some WWE or whatever they call themselves now, because they're forever changing. Women who have been kick ass over history and stand out.
There have, but this was like the first time it like finally proved to like the misogynist in chief over there that they could be just as much of a draw. They didn't have to sideline women's wrestling. Like you get one match. Like when we were kids, we saw like one.
There'd be one
match
every once in a while. Yeah, once a year maybe. Yeah.
But now it's
I remember the first time they brought the women's championship. I was like, "There's a women's championship." I didn't even know that.
Well,
there's never women.
Speaking to that point, in AEW, there was a female wrestler named Big Swole who recently didn't renew with AEW, which is like one of the most popular organizations right now, because she was saying that there's not enough diversity in AEW, whereas like there are so many female wrestlers, but most of the men are the ones who are getting like all of the big television spots, all of the big promos and things. And like you have like, you know, Britt Baker and some of the other ones. We're talking about wrestling.
I know. Anyway. I was just thinking, is this nerdy enough? Is wrestling nerdy enough?
But it's like it's one of those.
Welcome to where we talk about the Winter Soldier and wrestling. We've now
but it's like one
shifted
things
gears.
where it's like, you know, like how Andy's saying like how, you know, they're big, and Tiffany's saying like there are a lot of women who are getting recognition now. But then there's this one woman, you know, who's like she didn't re-sign her contract because she felt like women weren't getting enough recognition. So
that's called America. Let's again look at the workforce in any, not just wrestling. Let's look at tech. Let's look at banking. Let's look at the gatekeepers of nonprofit world and theater. This is a both and situation, right? There are kick-ass women, yet there are not enough kick-ass women, which is her point. It's a both and that's an underscore of America in any facet of America you walk into, except for maybe the teaching industry, right? It's male dominated. Hold on one.
And nursing probably as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's like we've made progress.
But to get back to this second thing I was going to say about getting back to whether or not things are scripted in a fight, right. There's a thing in wrestling called shoot fighting. Like shooting. So like if wrestlers are in a ring and are like one of them is genuinely pissed at the other one for some reason, they're gonna make shit hurt. They're gonna the moves might be called, but they're gonna put it on for real and make that guy, you know, I'm pissed at you. This headlock is going to hurt you and make you feel dumb. And
a good show to watch dealing with this is Heels. Heels gives you a lot of.
Is that
a dramatic show about bad guy wrestlers?
Heels is a dramatic show. It's a fiction show, right? It's not a documentary.
Yeah, headlined by the former Emerald Archer, aka Stephen Amell.
The guy who played Green Arrow in the Arrow series on CW.
Another bow and arrow guy.
But now he's a wrestler.
Oh, he's a real wrestler?
He's playing a wrestler in
he's
show.
Playing a wrestler, but he's not a real wrestler.
He's actually wrestled before. He's wrestled before. Stephen Amell was a big wrestling fan.
Really?
Has been in a few matches. Him and Rob Gronkowski. They've been been booked.
Well, we all know the most famous wrestling event time when somebody was pissed at somebody else and took care of it in the ring was when Andre the Giant famously pooped all over Bad News Brown. So
I'm pretty sure that was just Andre the Giant was sick in Mexico.
No, they said he and Bad News Brown got into it. I was recently watching an interview with Bad News Brown, where he was like,
he actually talked about it.
Well, he and Andre got into it. Andre used a racial slur. Bad News Brown called him out. Andre was drunk. Later, Andre apologized, but somewhere during their time when they didn't get along, I think Andre pooped all over him.
In the middle of a ring.
Yeah, in the ring, diarrhea.
All right, that's weird.
But
I want here's how we get back to the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, how do we get back to the Winter Soldier, which is what we're talking about?
Can we properly introduce the Winter Soldier? Hello, nerds. Welcome to this episode of Nerd School, where we had a chance to watch Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Andy's got a transition.
Yeah, the transition is that I
think
wrestling UFC MMA fighter plays a major role in Captain America: The Winter Soldier as Batroc the Leaper, the master of the French art of savate.
And that just happens to be my first question that I wrote down on my questions list for Captain America: Winter Soldier. So like TBJ said, yes, welcome to the Captain America: Winter Soldier episode, directed by Anthony Russo and Joe Russo.
Yep, former directors on Community.
Russo Bros.
Wait, they directed
episodes of Community.
Really?
Which is why you may remember seeing Danny Pudi.
Abed.
Yes, Abed. He's in my notes. Abed. When I yelled, Abed. I don't remember Abed being in this.
He's barely in
it.
And
then,
I'll say you could blink and miss him.
He had a great little moment.
And that Nicole Brown is in Avengers Endgame.
Oh, really?
They also directed.
And we know Troy is in the Spider-Verse, right? Isn't he?
He was
into the Spider-Verse.
But he was also in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love Community and I love Dan Harmon. Anyway, but So yeah, we're talking about Captain America: Winter Soldier and Anthony Russo and Joe Russo. I didn't know that they directed episodes.
And Joel McHale, Jeff Winger, was in the original Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's, I believe, as like a banker that denied Aunt May a loan.
Okay.
As long as we're talking about community.
Yeah. Well, this movie came out in 2014, starring Chris Evans, Samuel L. Jackson, Scarlett Johansson. According to IMDb, those are the top 3 billed. But then my first question was, so right towards the beginning of the movie, we get that right away. It just jumps into, besides already at the beginning, Falcon. I was way more excited now that I've seen Falcon and Winter Soldier when it starts off with Falcon and Cap doing their running, bit. I was like, yes, Anthony.
I was gonna say it was nice to go back and watch this, having seen Falcon and Winter Soldier, and just get reminders of, number one, hell yeah, Anthony Mackie.
Anthony Mackie, yes.
A lot, but let's talk about Anthony Mackie a little bit, because yum.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Listen, you guys talk about your things. We're gonna talk about Anthony Mackie right here.
He's a good-looking man.
He is, and very talented. He's got some great.
He's good.
But it was really good to go back and watch that scene of banter between the two of them to start off.
It was neat. It was neat to see that character beginning.
And it's like, Falcon Winter Soldier is about the legacy of Steve Rogers. This is good to go back and see how they got, they cared so much about this guy.
Yeah.
Why Steve Rogers is so important to these two guys in the first place.
Well, it was so neat to see him, and then right away, Scarlett Johansson picks him up and takes him to this mission, and that's where they're going. And Batroc has got that boat, they've got and right away I was like, well, Sitwell's on there. What's going on? Of course, we see Sitwell's bad later, but Batroc, that was my first question. Is Batroc? I know he's an MMA fighter. The guy playing him,
Georges St. Pierre. He's from Quebec.
Now, are you guys
Quebec?
I guess I would look at Art being probably the only. I'm guessing here, probably the only MMA. Even if
I'm not big.
I don't know if you are, Art. I'm just guessing. Like, I know Andy's probably not an MMA guy. TBJ, you don't strike me as an MMA. But Art, have you watched any MMA?
I have, but it's one of those things where I'm kind of squeamish when it comes to blood and stuff like that. and not even it's too Romo Greckany grapply for me.
Romo Greckany.
Romo
Greckany. Yeah.
Romo
Greco-Roman. Romo
Greco grappling.
Yes, it's a new art star term.
Here's the thing. We do this every time. I don't know why, Andy, you try to decipher me. Like, I am the resident weirdo, the master of weird metaphors. Like, I'm gonna say stupid shit. I'm gonna say it.
And I like to obsess on semantics and how, like, when people misspeak, I always like to call them out and make them feel weird about it.
Yeah, so we have to pause to like dwell
and so what ends up
Romo Greckany.
A lot of times I'll say things because I know that when I say it, Andy's going to come in and he's going to do his side shade at me.
Romo Greckany ball.
Did you say side shade? Andy's not shady. It's shading you.
I'm pretty sure that was pretty direct shade, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any side shade.
It was like deserved shade. That was not even like.
Okay, so my question was, is this Batroc guy, the guy playing Batroc, is he a well-known MMA fighter? Does anybody know that?
Oh, George, I think so. I think he won championships in the UFC.
Okay.
I was just reading a little bit about him before.
And then my other question is, Batroc, what's this character? What's the deal?
Batroc the Leaper, Georges Batroc, introduced in Tales of Suspense number 75 in 1966, a Stan Lee, Jack Kirby creation.
Oh.
And pretty much until I think this movie, he's been a ridiculous French stereotype joke character.
Oh, really?
It's like Batroc the Leaper, sacre bleu. He's that kind of guy. Like, he's got the actual ridiculous stereotype French mustache.
Okay.
If he wasn't wearing his uniform, he would probably be wearing stripy shirts and carrying baguettes all around.
Okay.
That's how ridiculous he was. And it was a Captain America villain, although interestingly enough, introduced in that same issue, also introduced Sharon Carter. Agent 13.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions about her too. Yeah. She's Agent 13. Okay.
Yeah, in 1966. But yeah, he's been around. He's like a mercenary. He's the master of the French martial art of savate. And and he talks about it a lot. But now this sort of reimagined him in a more like, all right, we got to use Batroc the Leaper because he's ridiculous, but let's like he's wearing similar colors to the Batroc uniform, but he doesn't have the ridiculous mask.
Okay.
So this was a way to sort of, I guess, reel his craziness in a little bit.
All right. He looks a little bit to me like the swordsman, also, like with that little mustache and I don't know. So
let me remind me. I have a note about the swordsman when we get to the end of this movie.
Oh, okay.
Which is just
hopefully we'll
random connection to Hawkeye, which we just
okay. Well, that helps explain Batroc the Leaper.
Batroc the Leaper. Like even his dialogue was written in a bad, like they used to write accents into like Rogue from the X-Men has a Southern accent. They'd always write it like, listen, sugar, then spell it out S-U-G-A-H.
Okay.
Whenever she'd say like
sugar,
I'm gonna do this, they would spell it A-H.
Oh,
like,
in the comics.
Yeah, they'd write it down so you could tell so you had a Southern accent.
Oh.
And in this case, they all of his dialogue would be written in a French accent, like all of these were Z's, and
okay,
that's how silly it was.
Okay, and so they actually got a French MMA guy, and it was a pretty
French
good
Canadian, but still
French Canadian. Okay, it was a pretty good fight.
Although then randomly they go, actually Batroc is Algerian, and like Robert Redford.
Yeah, they point that out in the dialogue later.
Like,
yeah.
Why? Well, I don't know.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Well, I mean, the whole point is he's French. You got a French Canadian guy to play him.
Yeah.
Why is he Algerian? I don't know.
Yeah, when the world leaders are talking, Joe, they're like French guy. He was like,
oh yeah,
actually,
yeah. Okay, now I remember.
It's an offhand line that doesn't come into play. It doesn't even. It didn't mean to even be there.
Well, my only question about the Batroc fight was one thing I did. I mean, it's a cool fight, but I kept thinking while Batroc is doing all these the flipping, why not just throw the shield at him while he's doing all the backflips, the fancy, and then just throw the shield at him. He's doing fancy backflips. It took a minute. You could have easily just thrown the shield and just knocked him out, but
they wanted you to be awed.
Yeah,
it was his moment to shine.
That was the leaper part. He was doing
the
leaping and leaping.
Yes. So the leaping also mesmerizes Cap. He has to watch it.
Well, the director just made a choice. The director made a choice to let him shine for a moment. That's all.
Not everything is throw shield, immediately win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Okay. All right.
And like
Joe's world,
he's also got hit in the head a couple times. Like these guys are fighting and hitting each other. Sometimes.
Well, I did like the little bit of like, oh, I thought you were just a shield. He loses the shield and says, let's find out. He takes his mask off or whatever. Anyway, so right at this beginning, we see Jasper Sitwell and we see Rumlow is
Brock Rumlow.
Yeah, so that's what I want to ask. So Jasper Sitwell, we find out later, is a bad guy and all that. We get to that. So all my questions have been answered. I was like, oh, why is this guy end up being a traitor? Whatever, we find that out. But Rumlow, tell me about Rumlow. Well, Jasper Sitwell, if you have anything to tell me about him, too.
I do. Jasper Sitwell is a SHIELD agent who wasn't a traitor. Like there was a story
in the comics.
In the comics, he wasn't. He got honestly, he actually got he looked different too. He was like this like pasty white glasses, blonde hair kind of nerd dude.
Okay.
See, I gotta remember to talk into the mic and not look at Joe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't look at me.
That's the problem with being right now.
It's hard being this beautiful. Everyone wants to look at me.
That's true. He was introduced in Strange Tales.
Calendar models.
Yes.
Strange Tales 1944 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Okay.
The same series, Strange Tales, that introduced Doctor Strange and Nick Fury, incidentally. But there was a storyline that I realized some of the plot points in this film were drawn from. Was like this 1988 story, miniseries called Nick Fury versus Shield.
Okay.
Where Arnim Zola, who is a fucking batshit in the comics, creates this adaptoid, like synthezoid kind of character called the Deltite that basically infiltrates both Shield and Hydra by replacing actual people with robot duplicates, life model decoy duplicates. So, and it's that those elements are really into this, and Nick Fury has to fight against Shield to take it down because it's been taken over by Arnim Zola, which we see in this movie as well. So in that storyline, Sitwell was temporarily replaced by an LMD and brainwashed to serve Hydra after that for a little while, but then he came back and he wound up getting killed by a brainwashed Black Widow, I believe, which is an interesting little thing.
Wow.
But he was never an actual Hydra traitor.
Okay.
Like he was in this show.
So he was in this one. Okay.
But I think they've used some names of well-known or relatively well-known Shield people, like Alexander Pierce as well,
right?
To I guess perhaps throw people off the scent that
played by
maybe there
Robert
will be
Redford.
traitors.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexander Pierce in the comics is not a traitor. He's actually a dude Nick Fury recruited to help fight Shield when they were taken over at that
But
time.
nerds probably just love that they're using actual comic Shield people.
Yep. Although like these aren't exactly the characters from the books, but like no one's so invested in the minor Shield people that they're going to get upset when they're used differently.
Not even Art.
Not even me, mate.
Yeah.
Not even me, mate.
So yeah, I think that it was a way to say, oh, this is a real established character, so this is it's a way to fool the nerds as well. The nerds will expect like Jasper Sitwell, who know if they know him, they don't expect him to be a Hydra traitor.
Okay, yeah, so it surprises the nerds,
especially since we've seen Sitwell in Thor and
because we've seen this guy. We saw him in the after show credits thing, what is it, the one shot?
Yeah, the one shot with Coulson explaining the whole abomination thing.
So I was surprised, even though I had already seen this movie, I had forgotten that guy was a traitor because I have the memory of a dog. But it was good. Yeah, it was very I liked that.
And then Rumlow, you're asking.
Yeah, Rumlow. So who's Rumlow? He ends up being the
Rumlow. Yeah, his in the comics he's Crossbones.
Crossbones,
who is a dyed-in-the-wool asshole bad guy, follower of the Red Skull, is in love with the Red Skull's daughter. Sin is just a full-on white supremacist Nazi asshole.
Whoa, Crossbones! I've never heard of him.
Introduced in Captain America number 360 in 1989 by longtime Captain America writer Mark Gruenwald and Kieran Dwyer.
He's a white supremacist?
Yeah, like it's the Red Skulls. They're Nazi.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, I was about to say, Joe, did you miss that thread?
Yeah, he was Red Skulls and Nazi. Well, I was just upset because I'm Googling his image and he looks cool. So,
but he's a bad guy. But
he might look cool, but is he cool?
He was a mercenary from the get-go. He was in Taskmaster's school for supervillain henchmen.
Oh, he comes back in Civil War?
Yeah, he gets
because they pulled him out. That was one of my questions later. Towards the end, I think you see him. They pull him out of the rubble, right? And that's him. So that's a spoiler alert for future.
The Crossbones is a piece of shit. And,
okay.
And Brock Rumlow is a pretty big piece of shit in this movie. So, but like
you piece of shit.
Were you talking to me? No, just kidding. So Brock Lumlow. Yeah, so that was my big question. Like, I don't remember that guy being somebody. Like last time I saw this, now I'm paying attention to it. I was like, is that guy from the comics? Is this from the comics? So basically, the answer is probably always going to be yes. Everything's from the comics,
but not always necessarily as it was in the comics.
Yeah, not as. Frank Grillo plays Brock Rumlow.
Yep, that's right.
Is that a guy you guys love? Frank Grillo,
the Punisher.
He was just
what?
He was a Punisher.
No, he wasn't.
Wasn't he a Punisher?
No.
You sure?
Dolph Lundgren, Joe Barenthal, John Barenthal was his name, and Volstagg, Ray Stevenson have been Punishers. Frank Grillo should have he looks like he could be the Punisher, but he was actually in an Edge of Tomorrow ripoff where he was in he was a guy who died over and over and kept coming back in action movie shit.
Well, he was also in Wolf Warrior 2. Anyway, but people like that guy. Yeah, he played a pretty good jerk. I felt like he just looks like a jerk.
But you kind of didn't.
He got a jerk face, Joe.
Yeah, he's got a punchable face.
If you don't know the name Rumlow, you don't telegraph him as a jerk, right? You don't know necessarily that he's going to turn out to.
Well, I had no idea, and I didn't even remember, even though I had seen this movie before. I didn't remember that he ended up being bad, but he just, I don't know. I mean, I love that elevator scene where Cap is like, I just love that whole thing where he's like, anybody want to get out?
Yeah.
And he's
that once the shot before when the elevator first opened up with Cap looking out the window, that was an awesome shot. I actually took a screenshot of that and I'm gonna use this for my wallpaper. Even though it's almost like I'm looking at his ass, but it's still like it's a great shot.
You might have been, and that's okay. No, I love that scene. Just a quick I see you guys. I'm gonna give you an out. I don't know why in the world they thought they could do that. I mean,
well, the plan was let's box him in. He can't do any of his fancy moves. Let's just swarm him with, give him no room, and maybe this is the way to beat him. And it wasn't the way.
Turns out,
it was just so cool watching him walk away.
But even
from
just like them coming in,
bodies.
like the floor that they said they were going to, it's like, why are you going to this floor? Like, why is this mercenary type going to this floor kind of thing?
Yeah.
So, like I was looking at shit like that, like it just seemed odd from the jump when they just started coming in and saying like, yeah, admin, like where the fuck you going?
Yeah, he just knew it. Yeah. My next little note was Kristen from Statistics, because throughout this whole movie, Black Widow is trying to talk to Cap about dating and like, you've been dead for a while. What about Kristen from Statistics? Like, rumor has it, if you asked her out, she might say yes or whatever. And he's like, that's why I don't, or whatever.
That's why I don't ask.
Yeah.
Too busy is what it ends up saying. So I started Googling. I paused the movie and I started Googling Kristen from Statistics just because I thought, did they end up turning this into something? Is this somebody? Is
it a bit? No.
Did you end up on Rule 34?
On what?
Rule 34.
Did you end up on Rule 34?
What's that?
If it exists, there is porn of it.
Oh, yeah, I was watching statistics porn. No, but then
Lord,
shortly
help you
after
guys.
she talks about
That's a real hot 3 right there.
Well, she does talk about the nurse from across the
What's
hall.
the probability of that, sir?
Probabilities, percentage.
The nurse who isn't a nurse, the nurse.
Yeah, the nurse across the hall ends up being, she's cute. She might like it. She ends up being Sharon Carter, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, and I didn't recognize her until they showed her. I was like, oh, I know her from somewhere. What? Oh, where do I know her from? And I totally forgot. She was all over whatever show.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
So you still need a lot of work. You still need a lot.
I'm getting there, but I shouldn't have watched Falcon and Winter Soldier, so I really shouldn't know that yet. So I need to see everything 2 or 3 times. But I'm telling you, watching these now with you guys is really helping me. Like, I'm starting to get things like, oh my gosh, yes. Oh, and it was really neat seeing Anthony Mackie. Like, that was like, oh my God, I already know him. And it's doing its job. The whole thing we've talked about throughout all this, all these shows are developing these secondary characters they don't have time to develop. And I'm like, it's working, because I started this movie and I was like, I love Anthony Mackie already. Like, I love him. I'm so excited to see him jogging, and everything he does is great because I love him already. Like, he's won me over in the show. Yeah. And so it works. Like, I'm so invested in this secondary character.
You're having the experience that nerds have,
that you guys all have with
like,
comics.
When you first see a guy, you know who he's playing. You recognize the character. You know, we know him. Oh, that's the dude from the comics. You're going, that's the dude from the show I already watched.
Yes.
Of the future. And this is where
and that's what was hard for me to remember. Like, and that's what I was going to ask you, but I ended up looking it up. Like, is this the first time Falcon shows up? Yep. And that's our intro to him, right?
Yep.
Which it already feels to me like we've known him, of course, because we just all watched Falcon Winter Soldier. Yeah. But anyway, it's doing its job, and I love Anthony Mackie, and I'm always marveled by the Marvel universe.
Marveled by the Marvel universe. Quick, put it on the shirt.
But yeah, so Sharon, and that's, oh God, I have some more questions about them later. Did anybody, before we keep going, have anything else?
Sharon Carter, introduced in 1966, was originally introduced as Peggy Carter's younger sister.
Okay.
Because in 1966, World War II had just ended 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, right. So, and that's kind of another question I have, which you guys have probably already answered. So, Captain America originally was only frozen for 20 years.
Yeah, he came
and now he's frozen for 40 years and 80 years or whatever.
Yeah, and so they have to keep the same continuity. They occasionally have to. It's often called the sliding time scale, Marvel sliding time scale, which is like Punisher started in Vietnam and now he's in Afghanistan.
Oh, they got to adjust it to another similar type of situation.
And although every once in a while they'll tell a story of like just a standalone story of Punisher specifically about Vietnam. Or like a Nick Fury story that's set in the original time he would have been set in, but that's just rare.
But Captain America first in the comics really was in the 40s, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't frozen, and then he wasn't frozen until they did the 60s ones, and then he was frozen. I know we already talked about.
Yeah, I don't know if they ever actually officially wrote him up, but when they reintroduced him in I think the early 60s Avengers comics, they kind of introduced him and like sort of made the story about where has he been for the last 20 years.
Gotcha.
And now then you have that ability. He's frozen and he's suspended animation that can be as long as you need it to be.
Yeah.
And at the end of that was shortly after Bucky had supposedly died, like because he was on a missile, he couldn't get off of it and it blew up and he was in the water. And then in the comic books, he was considered dead forever. Like the rule for a while, I've said this before, that only Bucky stays dead.
Right.
Was like the prevailing rule in like we don't bring Bucky back because it's a central tragedy to Captain America, but anyone else who dies in comics can come back.
Okay.
And then eventually in 2005, Ed Brubaker, the writer, comes up with this way to bring Bucky back.
The comic book writer.
Ed Brubaker, who I think, I don't know where, I just thought of it now. I think he has a cameo in this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know other comic book people had cameos other than Stan Lee.
There's probably people we don't know that are in that world.
There's a lot of creators who pop up. It just, you got the masses don't exactly know who they are, but some nerd who really knows that, they're like, oh, I know that person.
One of the Russo brothers is in this movie as like the doctor when like they first go to the underground doctor and see Nick Fury is still alive.
Yeah.
Like the first doctor that comes to meet Black Widow after she's shot after the big bridge fight. That's one of the Russo brothers, the directors.
Really? Oh, that's
fun.
And you know what they look like just from, or you just read that somewhere?
Yeah, I think Ed Brubaker's like he's in the back. He's when Alexander Peters is and like Winter Soldier's going, I know that guy. I know him.
Yeah.
Ed Brubaker is standing in the background. He
really?
has that one line like he's getting erratic.
That's cool.
That's the guy who basically invented the Winter Soldier.
Oh.
Winter Soldier, I just learned also is the term.
Wait, he invented the Winter Soldier for comics?
Yeah, he didn't create Bucky, but he created the Winter Soldier version of Bucky.
Oh.
And the term Winter Soldier comes from the name for a 1971 investigation launched by Vietnam veterans against the war to uncover war crimes and atrocities committed by America and its allies during that war.
Oh.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Which gives this a whole new term. I thought it was some kind of Russian thing.
Yeah, I thought it was all Russian. I was winter everything is Russian.
Right, but that's very interesting that a guy called the Winter Soldier, named after a war crime investigation, is basically like a walking war crime. He's
He's been responsible for a good 80% of war crimes for a while.
And he is the victim of a war crime as well. Being
accurate.
The experimented, captured, the tortured, experimented on by Nazis that created what he like, turning him into something he never wanted to be.
But did you say I'm just so many thoughts and so many my brain is so dumb and slow. Did you say that there was a Winter Soldier in the comics that wasn't Bucky, and then there was the Bucky Winter Soldier?
There wasn't as far as I know, Bucky was brought back as the Winter Soldier, and it was like just like in this movie, it was a mystery who the Winter Soldier was.
Okay,
it was revealed to be Bucky. Surprise! This was around 2005. And it had nothing to do with Hydra.
Oh, okay.
It was it eventually connected, but there was a Department X, a Soviet department, recovered Bucky's body from the water where he was supposed to have died, and turned him into gave him a bionic arm to repair the one that was damaged, that he almost died.
Okay.
And then basically set up this program. The department was run by Alexander Lukin. Who basically here it is, you're an assassin, we've brainwashed you to be an assassin, you go do what we want, come back, we'll put you on ice until we need you again. You're just going to be a perpetual killing machine,
just
for
machine
us.
that they unfreeze and kill people.
And in the movie, that's what Hydra's doing to shape the world into this chaotic mess that they're going to use to get everyone to say, all right, we don't need the freedom, give us our security, and then they're going to murder everybody.
He's just a big weapon.
An interesting statement on the state of the world. But at one point in the comics, Alexander Lukin orders the Winter Soldier to assassinate the Red Skull.
Okay.
But the Red Skull has the cosmic cube that, if you remember in the first Avenger, he has that.
Yeah.
The Tesseract is a little different in comics, and it's more of a you can wish things into existence. So as he's dying, he's able to transfer his mind into Alexander Lukin's mind. So that's how a connection happens. They're both living in his brain for a while. So the Red Skull can figure out a way to get his own body back or something.
Oh, wow.
That's a lot of weird shit.
Yeah,
because comics are weird.
Yeah, right. It's just cool to know the origins of some of these things that are a little bit different, right? Whatever. Cool. All right. Well, and pretty soon we get into the Captain America and Nick Fury arguing about the mission, and I had a question for you guys just to ask, like, where do you guys? But it's hard because that argument evolved, so it's sort of changed. But at first, the argument was, he was pissed that Fury, I keep on telling Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury didn't tell him that Black Widow had a separate mission, and he was all mad. And it was like, no, if I told you, then that, but you should always tell me. The soldiers all need to be on the same page. I was going to ask you guys, where are you guys stand on this argument between Fury and Cap? Whose side are you on in this argument of should he have told him? But I feel like that kind of evolved into the whole plot of, then they got into the argument of, we're going to put up these satellites to watch everybody and kill bad guys before they do something bad. And then Captain America's like, what about the justice system? And I was going to ask where you stand on that, but then it ends up being the whole plot point. And obviously one's,
well, it's worth talking about. It's the central thrust of the film is preventative Minority Report style.
Is exactly what I was about to say, Andy. A little
Minority Report. Murder.
Good old Tom Cruise. Yeah.
Good old Tom Cruise. No, we're talking about the plot, not the actor.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Like that whole idea of murdering bad guys before they become bad guys based on an algorithm?
Well, that's the Hydra goal, and Nick Fury. Nick Fury is not his thought is like, we have this system in place to negate things if they start to happen,
right?
Whereas Hydra is just going to murder 20.
They're just going to murder everybody.
Yeah, they're just going to go ahead and cut it off.
So I feel like it.
Yeah,
Nick Fury doesn't know about the algorithm, but he's still kind of on board for this globe, like the suit of armor around the world that Iron Man sees later, and that's Age of Ultron. We're not there yet.
We'll get to that.
But it's. And then Captain America is right. You're pointing a gun. You're holding a gun to the head of everyone on Earth and calling it protection.
Yes, I love that line. Yeah,
it's it's not freedom. It's fear. Punishment comes after the crime. It's
the punishment.
The more I see, like every time I've watched this, my view has kind of evolved on it. It's kind of like I'm trying to figure out, like, seeing where both sides are coming from, and sometimes the dialogue's so quick, and then so much happens in this movie.
It's so fast
that you don't always have time to think about like the actual theme, like the questions at the root of it, because they're on to some other thing, some other fights happening.
Well, it seems like Samuel L. Jackson's character, Nick Fury, his perspective evolves on it. He ends up kind of going with Cap, even though Cap's the leader, but he says, you're the leader, and he wants to keep S.H.I.E.L.D. intact, and he's like, no, we got to get rid of all of it. We can't keep it intact. And that's when I feel like reluctantly he went with Cap's plan. It was like, he was
outnumbered and he was going to have no help.
Yeah. I don't know if he was like, okay, fine, you're right. It's more of I'm not a one-man show.
Yeah, I can't do this without everybody else's help. I have a collapse.
So you think he still stood by his original argument?
I think Nick Fury's Nick Fury. Period.
It's things like this that give me trust issues.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's interesting to see both sides. I often think about all the stuff that goes on that we don't know about, right? Government wise and what's happening. And honestly, I don't want to know if it's above my pay grade. So I kind of fell in the middle, not necessarily like, yes, let's have this major weapon, and definitely not on the Hydra side of just killing before anything happens, because free will. But I do sometimes think Cap can be very idealistic, like super idealistic.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, ooh, Cap, there's some reality. We'll see some reality in this thing.
Yeah, that's part of the point of this thing is he's black and white, and he's dealing with the modern world that's all gray.
Right.
A lot of gray.
He's got to adjust. Like in the last movie, I feel like Avengers, like he had to adjust to. Iron Man was saying one thing, and he was like, no, we got to do it this way. And they were arguing about that. But it's like, that's not how it is. That's not how the world is. And I mean, Tony was questioning S.H.I.E.L.D. from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to question any major entity that has too much power, right? You should always ask questions.
Yeah.
This whole thing about Hydra infiltrating Shield, it's like one of the last, I guess, major kind of storylines in like the Agents of Shield television series. Because then you had like all of these, I don't want to say they were lovable, but they were like the heroes for like the first few seasons. And now you find out like someone who was like your love interest or someone you was really feeling was actually now like a Hydra agent.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but then also, I guess, then they kind of separated from the MCU, but then they kind of circled back, but kind of veered a little bit in season 7, when Hydra now had Project Insight, but they was using it to pick off the Marvel heroes instead of just like, you know, everyday random people who might become good or bad kind of thing. But it's like, it's one of those things where, go ahead.
No, finish. I had a question.
Oh, I was gonna say, it's one of those things where it's like you break canon, but then you kind of still dip into canon, and you have like all these other different kind of backstories going on with like Project Insight and the whole Hydra infiltrating Shield thingamajig. That's all I was gonna say. It's like it still was a big thing for a hot minute, you know, even after Winter Soldier.
I was going to ask you and Andy, if I remember correctly, isn't there a storyline in the comic books where Cap himself is Hydra for a bit?
Yeah.
That's a recent thing called Secret Empire. They sort of, and it just
called
came
what?
along. Secret Empire, I believe it was, and it just no.
Yeah.
Secret Empire is like a secret.
Oh, great!
Secret
Fill us
Empire
with misinformation.
I think Secret Empire is the part of it. But it's like
Secret Empire is an organization that like was like a
but like
thing
the big thing was you said it was a big panel. We see Cap and Cap screams "Hail Hydra," and the people outside of it's just like the same thing when they decided to make Superman gay, but like people outside of the comic book world was kind of
Secret Empire
super butthurt because all of these years Captain America was a patriot. And now you're basically making him a Nazi.
Yeah, I think it came around at the exact wrong time. I think no one expected an actual Nazi sympathizer to win the presidency. So that was about the same time the Secret Empire story hit.
Oh, in real life? Okay.
So if
I
think it would have went over better if Hillary Clinton had won, and then like we didn't have this actual crisis of new Nazism just exploded.
Yeah, it just really brought them.
Then at the same time, Marvel Comics has taken away our most ardent Nazi fighter, or like the iconic Captain America guy, turning him into a Nazi, just really hit wrong at the time, and everyone was real pissed about it.
Wow.
And so like
I think it's timing.
It wasn't gonna stick, like shit like that doesn't stick. But it was just not what anyone wanted to read at the time, where we needed people to actually be fighting Nazis.
You're right.
Well, I thought about it because, here we are in this movie again, where it's very clear he is anti. But then at some point, the comics decided to explore this. And you're right, Andy, at the wrong damn time. Read the room, America.
But see, like the comics have to be planned so far in advance.
Yeah,
that's
I
why
know.
I'm saying no one expected that to happen. And they, like
it happened
because it takes so long to draw and create all these comics. They have to plan in advance. So
it was horrible. And a note: Superman isn't gay. It's his nephew, right? It's his nephew.
It's his son. It's his son. It's one of Superman. It's not like the. I don't want to say the mainstream Superman, but it's John Kent, who is.
It's not the OG Superman. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like how they have like different Spider-Man. Where it's like, there is Superman, but like in this reality, his son is Superman. And he's like, I don't know, I haven't been reading it a lot, but like, I don't think he's taking an active part being Superman. It would be almost like, let's say you had a world where both Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne were coexisting, and you had Thomas Wayne's Batman and Bruce Wayne's Batman, but Bruce Wayne just happens to be either the younger Batman or this Earth's Batman kind of thing.
Is there Batman porn?
Of course there's Batman porn.
I feel like, again, what Andy said, whatever that stupid rule is, someone.
Rule 34.
Oh, there was actually like an adult only version of Batman comic where they actually showed Batman's dick.
Oh gosh. Okay. With that, let's go back to this movie for a second, because I have a question that pertains to Captain America, Winter Soldier.
Okay.
So now that watching this, one thing I thought, like, now that we discover that Hydra or Shield is infiltrated by Hydra, is there, or do we already know, like, if we go back to the previous couple movies, like Avengers and Iron Man, like when Tony is questioning Shield, is there little hints of that's what he's on to, like that maybe Hydra is involved or not? Is there nothing?
We don't know, but it's like we're gonna run into the same problem in a few years when we get Secret Invasion. It's like who or what was Skrulls at what time and when kind of thing. So it's like, now that you're sitting there, you've outed Hydra and Shield. It's like, how far back does it go? And like Agents of Shield kind of dealt with it, where it's like you saw, like I say, you had, the one, his name was something with I forgot his fucking, but he's on Chicago Fire right now. That's the only reason I remember. But like one of the new, I forget his name.
Agent
but like
Ward?
He was in love. Him and Daisy was building this relation. Daisy,
Grant Ward.
But that's not in the
Grant
MCU,
Ward,
right?
They was building this. Say it again.
That's not really in the MCU.
But at the time, it still was, though. It kind of sort of still was.
Yeah, like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like, they viewed themselves.
Yes, they did, but the MCU people, Kevin Feige said,
They have not acknowledged that yet.
Yeah,
but they might.
I'm going to bet this multiverse movie coming up is going to.
But I have more. My bigger question is, like, have you guys gone back now? I mean, now knowing this happens, is there little hints in Avengers and things?
I'm thinking back.
Not really. I mean, Tony Stark has reason.
He's a questioner. Yeah.
He's a questioner, but he's also a former military weapons dealer himself. So he knows, kind of how the sausage is made. And so he doesn't trust it.
Yeah. This is my take on it. I feel as though they're leaving it up to the viewer. It's like in art, like a mental case kind of like, it's like what you take from it. Like a lot of people are now sitting there saying, because of what we found out in Hawkeye, that Tony and you don't know this yet, Joe, but like Tony and Age of Ultron knew that Laura Barton was a SHIELD agent. He called her an agent, and then the two kids at the time were mini agents.
He didn't know that. He was joking.
Dude, but here's the thing.
I mean,
but the internet is talking, is what art is saying. People are trying to make sense of it.
What I just said was, it leaves it up to the viewer. You can say, no, it wasn't Joe. I mean, Andy, but Tiffany might believe that, hey, he knew. I might believe.
I don't think he knew.
Fronk.
Josh Fronk, everybody.
Bobby Cantro might believe that they were SHIELD agents.
Shout out to Josh Fronk.
It's one of those things where it's like Marvel can just sit there online and say, you know what? You guys who thought that Tony was right about calling Laura Barton an agent, he could have been joking about the kids, but he could have been dead serious about his wife. You never know.
Yeah, part of me is like going back and just character-wise in human nature. I think it's, you question anything. Nick Fury is always secret. I think people are always going to question what he is up to with S.H.I.E.L.D. because he always moves in shadows. And Tony, like Andy said, he knows that things are not as black and white or clean cut as it seems, even for an agency that's supposed to be protecting us. There's a little bit of mud. So I think it was just naturally questioning it. I didn't see it as foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, I think a large number of people are always going to trust or have trust issues with big entities. I don't think it's just in the cinematic universe.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
what your military is doing, or the CIA is doing, or the FBI. Like, you're always gonna have these questions.
I think, like Nick Fury is, the spy. Even the secrets have secrets, is what Tony Stark says in the Avengers.
Yeah.
But this is like the whole point of this, I think, is to be blindsided,
right?
To not expect it. Nick Fury, like at one point, he goes, "Why do you think we're meeting here in this cave? I noticed." And right. Captain America's like, "How many people died before you did?"
Right.
And
right.
So like,
I guess I just wondered, like,
caught off guard. Like, he doesn't get it until he's locked out of one file.
Yeah.
And then he goes, "All right, something's weird." He doesn't notice that Hydra has been there since the beginning.
I just wondered if there's like little tidbits, like if we go back and see, or did they not even know they were going to do this yet? Like if you go back
probably did.
to Avengers? Is there little just like in the background somebody just looking suspicious, sit well in the background, let's looking suspicious or something, you know?
No, I think the whole point is to be like, holy shit, who's the mole, who's the bad
Well, and
guy?
that's the other question. Did the guy who played Sitwell, does he know, like, when did he know he was gonna be the bad guy? You know, like, do they keep it sealed?
His pages of the script and no other.
Yep.
And they probably don't they like swear him to secrecy, like you can't say
they don't
anything?
give you more ahead of time. If it's a big secret, you only are given, so like you're not given the whole script.
Do you think you guys will be able to keep that secret? You get cast tomorrow.
That's why they don't give so
I
many.
think I would.
Whole thing.
You'd be able to keep it.
Look at how much money you're gonna get depending on whether or not you keep that secret.
Yeah, but you just want to.
Yeah, I'm not talking to anybody. No, I'm by the pool in my new mansion. And questions. Just I want to say I've been out in these streets keeping busy.
Who's feeding you grapes, TBJ? Is it Chris
my
Hemsworth?
new pool boy, one of the Hemsworths, or Anthony Mackie? Now it's fine.
Oh, all three of them are just gonna carry you around on like a big, you know, throne. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna send Tom Cruise over.
Tom Cruise is gonna be your pool boy, art star.
Nope. Thor will get rid of him immediately. He cannot hang out with me. But if you suddenly see me balling, and you know I moved to Hollywood, don't ask me questions. I can't answer you.
Okay, back to the movie. Can we talk about the Cap Museum for a second?
Yeah.
Mhm.
When he walks in the halls and where he ends up getting his costume when he has to run, you know, when he's kicked out of S.H.I.E.L.D. I love that bit that he went and grabbed him. That guy's like, oh, I'm so fired. It's Stanley.
You mean Stanley?
Stanley, yeah. But I just made a note. I just thought about this. They should make these museums for real, for nerds.
Real, yeah.
Like with all the
when he first
superheroes.
walked in there earlier, I was like, man, I would love to go to the Smithsonian and see the Captain America exhibit.
Like if they had a real one and just pretended it was real about Captain America, if they did one for Thor, they did one for a Swordsman or Spider-Man.
You're more likely
nerds
just
would
get a Marvel museum.
A Marvel museum. Nerds would,
but I don't think it would be.
So much.
I don't think it would be at the Smithsonian, but two, I think you would get one overall big one and not really divided. Like each room may be divided into.
Right. Yeah. Different exhibits but if you do that for everything, if you did a Harry Potter museum like that, where you could walk through and hear the history.
There's a whole Harry Potter world.
Though, there already is. Yeah. So they just should make one for all these Marvel heroes. They should make a whole.
There is actually a superhero museum of sorts somewhere in Indiana that I discovered.
We're going road trip, Nerd School road trip.
Someone sponsor us.
Yeah, earlier this year actually when we went to Chicago to.
Oh, you went to go see the Van Gogh?
Like you saw it on the maps, like, oh, there's a superhero museum like just off the road, and it was very obviously just a guy who had a bunch of shit and collected a bunch of shit.
You said he couldn't have been a museum?
It looked just like a comic store, except the shelves are filled with, you know, props and toys and things.
Okay.
Like it's very obviously some guy had a collection and decided to call it a museum.
Marvel would have to be in on making this a museum.
Right. Yeah, they got to make dollars on it. I just think it would make so much money if you could walk through and have.
I believe it.
Like I'm just thinking of that book that Andy and I had when we played that RPG, the Marvel RPG, which should be a special episode of our podcast. We got to play that RPG, this Marvel RPG. But there was a book like this thick, filled with characters from comics that
character after character. It's the official handbook of the Marvel universe. You can get issues of comics that are just. Here are
I used to collect those.
It's like a Bible of Marvel people that you know a lot of them never heard.
Then the who's who of DC Comics.
But if they had like an exhibit, you could walk in and hear something about each one of those, like where they showed up in the comic. Anyway, that was just my money making idea. Maybe Nerd School Museum. Maybe we need to do it and get a hold of Marvel, and that'll be all of our jobs.
Like this is the episode of Nerd School where Art Star said Romo Greckany wrestling.
Romo Greckany. But then my next question is, okay, we get into Peggy and old Peggy, and this whole old lady Peggy's still alive, and he sees her picture, and then she talks about her husband for a little bit. Like, you introduced me to my husband, and I Googled this, but I got more confused on Google. So who was Peggy's husband?
We don't know.
Isn't it him? But it's like he marries her later in a future thing, right? Or
so
timelines are messed up.
This is a major thing that we would love to see a follow-up movie about, but I don't think we're going to get it. But we don't know at this point. We had no idea what's going to happen at the end of Endgame. But the Agent Carter series that followed, there was 2 seasons of it. And at the end of it, she was sort of getting involved with this dude. I want to say his name was Daniel.
Because she says he saved my husband.
Right. But that's not been clarified. And you could, if you want to believe that he traveled back in time into our timeline and just lived his entire life
again.
Well, you know, he was also on.
Well, never also says how long she was married to that homie. So she's on who was saving the war, and it could have lasted for 2 seconds. Like, we don't know.
It could have married for
marriages last forever.
He ended up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually time traveling with them in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, which was weird. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was weird just because when this movie came out, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like in maybe his 2nd season.
Okay.
And like until that point, it was kind of a sort of a boring monster of the week kind of thing.
Okay.
And then suddenly this movie comes out, and then they made a point of trying to react to the MCU movies on a schedule in which they came out.
Okay.
So this movie suddenly destroys the entire basis of their series.
Okay.
They bring S.H.I.E.L.D. down. There's no S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. And their whole.
And then the next week, this show took place right after that movie. Like they had it like, oh shit, we're Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right, but
S.H.I.E.L.D. sucks and is destroyed and is infiltrated by Hydra. What the fuck is this show?
Right.
And then that's when it got way more interesting.
Right.
Like it was never really great, but it was it. I was watching at the time, kind of waiting for it to like
get good.
It's nerd duty to watch this, and then something was like, oh, I have no idea where it's gonna go now.
Right.
So and they turned one of their main cast members, like Art was saying, Grant Ward. They turned out he was a Hydra spy.
Okay.
And he was like the main romantic lead in the film or in the show with their star.
Right. Yeah, I kind of vaguely. I watched some of that.
Right. So that was just like really interesting how they were trying to hew close to the MCU, saying please notice us, and they never did. So they
notice me, senpai.
Yeah. So they just went batshit with it at some point.
Well, and then when
started time traveling with people from Agent Carter into other planets and shit.
When Peggy was an old lady, I thought he should have, if he really loved her, he would have made out with her.
Don't go there. I knew you were about to go there, and let's not.
Come on.
She was obviously not. She had moments of lucidity.
Yeah, you tell her. Suddenly, she was like, they did a good job of realizing she had dementia, and that because she suddenly saw him again.
When I first saw this movie, I honestly did not realize that was actually Haley Atwell in makeup.
Oh, it was. That's what I was going to ask you. Why didn't they have Haley Atwell do this?
It was.
Oh, it was.
I didn't think it was.
Wow.
That's how good the makeup job.
That's hail to the makeup artist.
And that's props.
See?
There.
Yeah.
This is an example of when hair and makeup works.
Hair and makeup works. Not like Batman where they fucked it up.
On Robert Pattinson. I'm gonna be angry. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna be angry at his hair the whole time.
What if the movie's so good that it changes your opinion on that hairstyle?
I will still fixate on the stupid hair for years to come.
Well, just hope that he puts the cowl on a lot and covers it up.
That's all the time we have. We'll have to resume this conversation on the next episode. Peace out, Nerd Hive.
They say I can't rap about the president no more, but evidently they don't see we in the streets still poor. Still more incarceration of my kinsmen by the prisons, and people thinking this election to end racism. Proud over pessimism, glad to see Obama, but don't expect me not to speak out when I still see problems.
The Nerd Skool Podcast.
Nerd Skool is a member of the Queen City Podcast Network, powered by Ortho Carolina. Now offering video visits so you can take control of your orthopedic care from the comfort of your home. Schedule online at orthocarolina.com. Ortho Carolina, you improved.
Listen, people can make fun of me for my holiday movies all we want to, but I'm like, are you alive? Did I fuss at you today? Did I yell about anything? All right, then. You're welcome. You better thank Hallmark for keeping me safe.